this is Ethan Tapper, the Chittenden County Forester, and I'm out here with Andrea Shortsleeve, wildlife biologist for the Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we're out here at the Andrews Community Forest in Richmond. And so the purpose of what we want to do here is to do a little virtual tour to look at a couple different things and to discuss how we look at these different features that we've created and that we're encouraging at Andrews with the forest management work that we're doing, how we see them as a wildlife biologist and how we see them as a forester, and to give you a little bit more in-depth of a look of what we're doing here. So we're standing here in an area where we've created what's called a group or a patch opening. So this is an area where we've cut a whole lot of trees in an effort to simulate a natural disturbance. So this may look different than, a patch cut that you've seen somewhere else where like all the trees are gone and it looks completely clean and neat. Instead, this one has a lot of retention, so living trees and dead trees that have been retained within the patch, and also tons of dead wood on the ground, so whole dead trees, dead tops of trees. And the idea is that while we're harvesting some of these trees and bringing them out of the woods, that we also want to keep a lot of these, the wildlife and the ecological benefits of dead wood on the forest floor and dead trees, which are usually removed in the course of forest management. So the type of forest management we're doing here is what we call ecological forest management. And the idea is that we're managing forests like they manage themselves. So we really want this to more closely resemble a natural disturbance.
And because we're replicating a natural disturbance, we're going to be creating some different pockets of habitat that would naturally occur in the forest. And because of that, a diversity of wildlife is going to be able to use all these different features that are being created by this opening, whether it's a big perch on the white pine, or if it's creating tunnels and structure underneath the snow for a lot of the small mammals to travel through during the winter.
So we're a little bit further up the hill here at Andrews, and I just wanted to point out this big oak tree that we've left. So we're in the middle of another one of those group openings, an area where we're going to try and make the structure of the forest more diverse. So it's really important to have a diversity of different tree species, but you can think of the structure of the forest as the way that the forest grows. Different sizes and ages of species of trees, each one of which is conferring to the forest different wildlife benefits, different overall ecological benefits. So we're doing that here, and in the midst of that, I've marked this big red oak with an X. And so if you've been following these videos, you know that one of the things we're doing here as part of an ecological forestry approach is we're leaving big trees in the woods. We're also cutting big trees, but one thing we want to do in managing forests sort of like they manage themselves is to retain the benefit of having big old trees and eventually big old dead trees in the woods. So this is a tree, this big oak, that will be retained ostensibly forever.
And the different species of trees that Ethan is picking to leave as legacies is also really important for wildlife. Some of the tree species that he's picking, like this white oak here, produce a massive amount of seeds and nuts, acorns, for a variety of wildlife to eat. And they are also host to all of our native invertebrates, so different caterpillars and beetles and things like that are going to feed our entire food web.
So among the other features that we're trying to encourage here at Andrews that have significant wildlife and ecological value are what we call snags. So a snag is a dead standing tree. Now interestingly, traditionally people, when they're trying to clean up the forest or make it look neat and tidy, they might cut all the trees that are snags or all the trees with holes in them, what we call cavity trees. But actually these snag trees are really, really important both for wildlife and for some of the smaller critters that occupy our forest.
And just taking this tree as an example, you can see how full of life it actually is, even though it's dead. We've got a whole series of different mushrooms and fungi growing on the bark, which is going to feed invertebrates, in turn going to feed birds, and just feed into the whole ecosystem. The way that the bark is starting to peel off on the top is creating little roofs for bats and other small things to crawl under there and hide out during the day while they have their pups. And it's also creating a great perch spot for raptors and other large birds.
A study from the Pacific Northwest showed that inside a dead tree, there's actually about 4 times as much living biomass as inside a living tree. So what that living biomass is it's the little things that make the world work. Microorganisms, fungi, stuff like salamanders, of which this is really, really important habitat. So as you come into the forest at Andrews, you're going to see a lot of signs of tree mortality. And tree mortality is not necessarily a bad process. It's actually a really exciting, compelling part of what makes our forest work.
A lot of our native pollinators are actually invertebrates that live in dead wood. And so having standing snags like this, and when it falls down, having dead wood on the ground provides habitat for a lot of our native bees to live in throughout the year.
So we're seeing a lot of deer sign up here, a lot of tracks, some scats, some beds. And so while there is some deer browse damage here at Andrews, which is affecting our regeneration, we still want to provide really great habitat for deer. So it's a nuance that we want to strike, but we definitely want to create excellent browse for deer, and we want to provide excellent winter cover for deer at the same time that we're managing the population.
And it's incredibly important to do it here at Andrews Community Forest because it's a public piece of land that's easily accessible and provides great hunting opportunities. So not only do we want to reduce the deer population in certain parts of the state, Champlain Valley being one of them, we also want to make sure that we are still providing great, good quality habitat, so we are increasing the health of the herd and the landscape. So deer in Vermont are kind of at the northern region of their ability to live, just due to our severe winters. And one way that deer make it through our long winters is living in deer wintering areas, which are closed canopy forests that there's less snowfall. The wind and temperature are better in those deer wintering areas than they are outside of that forest. And it just makes it a lot easier for deer to survive. We're doing this harvest next to the deer wintering area, and what that means for the deer is that they don't have to expend a lot of energy to come out to find food because they can nibble on the tops and the branches that are being left without leaving the security of the wintering area.
So even though we're seeing that deer are a potential forest health threat in some parts of the state, our goal is not no deer. Our goal is a healthy deer population that's in balance with the amount of habitat that we have, and to have great habitat to produce lots of healthy deer.
So here we're looking at a big pile of slash and woody material. One of the cool features that happens out here when we create this stuff is we create a drumming log for rough grouse to stand on and call in their mates. So in the springtime you can come out here and you'll hear that noise that sounds like a car that keeps backfiring, and it's a rough grouse coming out here and standing on a drumming log, drumming and calling in its lady friends.
So thanks for joining us on this virtual tour of the forest management at the Andrews Community Forest. We're out here at the landing, and the last thing I wanted to point out was that in addition to this management work that we're doing that we think has a lot of value, providing really great habitat for wildlife and making our forests more complex and resilient, we're also really excited about this stuff, about producing local renewable resources, about thinking about how we lower the impacts of our resource consumption, which has impacts for both our local communities and also for ecosystems and communities more broadly.
I think it's just amazing that this is all happening on public lands that is close to a big urban center here in Vermont that provides opportunities not only for wildlife to feed and flourish on, but places for us to recreate, birdwatch, hunt, and just enjoy being out in nature.
Andrews Community Forest, it's got it all.